My name is Trevor Lecca. I'm Dubsado's product education lead, and today's webinar is about client journey mapping and how to go about setting up a premium client experience. So if you're unfamiliar, the idea behind client journey mapping is to kind of take a step back from your business process and to look at every single touch point throughout that process with the goal of reducing friction for your clients and also from the business owner standpoint, understanding where you might be able to automate and save yourself time, right? It's a holistic view at your business process because we can always make things a little bit better. And it's a good idea to even periodically, or if you haven't done it yet, it's a great time to do it right now. Look at your whole process and understand all the different things that your client will be interacting with, all the different copy you might be sending to your clients, understanding where your clients might be getting stuck somewhere, because we really want to make sure that the client is having as delightful and friction-free process as you can possibly create for them. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. So to come on and talk about client journey mapping with us, we'll be bringing on our guest today, Colie James, who is a client experience and system strategist and a Dubsado certified specialist with 12 years of experience in this creative space. She loves helping creatives automate their business process, reclaim their time, and get back to living, since no one should quit their 9 to 5 just to go ahead and work 24/7 in their actual business. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Colie James. She's coming. Always takes just a second. There we go. Hey, Colie, how's it going?
Hello, Trevor. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again as well. Thank you so much for being here.
I love it. I mean, anytime you guys want me to come teach on anything, client experience, specifically Dubsado, you know I answer the call.
This is literally your wheelhouse, so I knew there was no one better to have this conversation with us today. So again, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and pull myself out of the webinar and let you take over. Folks who are here in the chat, if you have questions while Colie is presenting, please feel free to throw those right there in the chats. If it's simple enough, I'll go ahead and attend to it right there in the chats, or I'll go ahead and earmark it for a Q&A at the very end. All right, folks? Cool.
All right, everybody. Now, I'm in Zoom, so I got to figure out how to share, even though I just did it before we got on. All right. Everyone, let me know if you can still see me, and now you can see my slides. Okay. So I know Trevor's already introduced me, but hi, I'm Colie James. I am literally obsessed with everything Dubsado. I have personally been a user since 2017. I have been a certified specialist since, I believe, 2021. I should have looked that up. But I am literally obsessed with everything automation, everything workflows, everything CRM, because I want everybody to run businesses that work for their life and not the other way around. Now, the title of this presentation, is Mapping Your Client Journey, Designing a Premium Experience. And I just want to put out there, premium is not what I would use to describe my client experience. As a family photographer and filmmaker, I actually want my experience to be stress-free. So I want to encourage you guys that if premium doesn't quite match your brand, it's okay. What we are going to be talking about in today's webinar is just how to make the best client experience that you can for you, your business, and your clients. Okay. So what this training is going to cover, and I feel like it's important for me to jump in with this because if you have previously watched any of my trainings, either on Dubsado's YouTube or on my own YouTube, they tend to be very technical. They tend to be, this is what you should do and this is how you do it. And this presentation is not really that. It is more an overview of how to create a client experience in your business because a lot of people want to start with the tool. And in this case, the tool is Dubsado, but your client experience is actually bigger than that. Your client experience is going to include things that cannot be done inside of Dubsado. So first, we're going to be talking about what a client journey is and what it really looks like. The second thing that I'm going to do is introduce you to how you can map that process out on a piece of paper. Literally, everyone should be starting with a client experience that begins with a marker and a pen and a piece of paper. And if that's not your thing, I mean, you can use a whiteboard, whatever your tool of choice is. The third step is we are going to be talking about how to translate that client journey and the client experience that comes from it into Dubsado specifically. And then I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to avoid what I consider to be the common mistakes that people have. All right. So first, why your client experience matters. And the truth is, first impressions matter. And if your inquiry process, if we're talking about starting it from when the client raises their hand and begins to indicate that they are interested in learning more about your services, if that part is clunky, if it is slow, if it is inconsistent, they notice and they are not going to move to the next step, which would be like your booking phase. A great client experience, it's going to build trust. It's going to instill confidence. It's going to position you as the professional that you are and that I know each one of you want to be. And the best part is that there are so many pieces of the client experience that can be streamlined and automated and still feel personal inside of Dubsado. Okay, so now we're going to kind of take a step back because we're going to be talking about client experience as a whole, but we actually start with your client journey. And one thing that I have seen out on the internet streets is that a lot of people conflate client journey with client experience. And client journey is simply the path that your client takes throughout your process. From the moment that they discover you or they inquire about your services, all the way until you deliver your services and you are perhaps trying to rebook them, trying to get referrals from them, and all of that. But the first step in making sure that you have an awesome client experience is knowing exactly what you want your client journey to be. Okay, so now your client experience. Once you've got that journey in place, once you have all the pieces laid out, at each step, you want to consider how that journey feels to your client. Does it feel confusing? Does it feel overwhelming? Are they lost? Are they all of a sudden not sure why they contacted you in the first place? These are all of the things that you look at inside of your client journey to make the process feel better, to make it feel premium, non-stress, whatever label you want your clients to feel when they are working with you. Okay, and then we get to the Dubsado part, which is the actual workflow. The workflow is how you take the parts of your client journey and you make it make sense in a piece of software that will centralize and organize it for you. Your workflow is what makes the client experience consistent. And I would say that being consistent is probably the bare minimum, but it is the most important part. You want every single client that comes into your business to get the same experience, the same level of care, the same luxury, if that is how you describe your brand. But in terms of Dubsado for the tool, it's made up of emails, forms, schedulers, and to-do tasks for yourself. That is what will come together at the end to be your workflow. All right, so big picture. We're going to start with that client journey. And again, that's the path of what they actually do inside your business. Then we are going to begin to map it out in workflows and start to infuse those pieces that make your client experience go from meh to wow. And then finally, because this is a Dubsado webinar, we are going to talk about how to take those steps and specifically put them inside of Dubsado to make your life easier, make your client's life easier, and make the entire process as consistent and awesome as possible. But we're not starting with the tech. Dubsado is the last step. There's still many things that you have to do before you click templates, workflows, and you click add workflow. There is so much work to be done before you get there. So Dubsado has a role, but it doesn't come first. Okay. So one thing that I've noticed in all of the students, all of the clients that I've had, is everybody starts to build systems, or more specifically, their client experience backwards. They start thinking about those specific workflow steps that you can do in your CRM, and they end up building their client journey and their client experience based on those tasks. But good systems are based on how people feel at every step and then also how they make decisions. Because at every step, you are trying to get your client to make a decision. In the beginning, you're trying to get them to decide to work with you. You want to make sure that you are the professional for them. You are going to solve their problem. But after they've paid you money, after they have committed to working with you, you are still asking them to make decisions. You are still confirming for them that they made the right decision so that they don't, in the back of their mind, have something like, oh, well, maybe if I had hired that other person, this process would be smoother. Okay, so overall, Your client experience. This is how you get it done in a way that makes your clients feel taken care of and instills that confidence throughout the whole process. First, you answer questions before they're asked. And it's okay if you can't do this at the beginning of your business. But as you work with more clients, as you get those panicked text messages or emails or phone calls for some of us, every time someone asks you a question and you haven't already presented them with the answer, that is what you need to jot down in your notes, because that means that somewhere in your process, you are missing where you needed to educate your client on that particular element. The second thing is to reinforce trust and social proof early in the process. Now, I am not a website designer. I am a system strategist, but I will tell you, you need the social proof everywhere on your website. And then you get to take those same bits and put them inside of Dubsado to, again, reinforce trust, instill confidence from the moment that they inquire until you deliver the services. Your social proof should do that for you. And it's not just in the beginning. Like for photographers out there, if you are trying to get clients to buy print products near the end of your customer journey, you might want to include social proof about how your clients love looking at wall art, how they love flipping through albums. That social proof still has a place in your client experience, even after they have committed to working with you. Now, number 3, you want to make the next step super clear. Every single one of your communications should include what comes next. Again, this is how you keep it consistent. This is how you minimize the questions that you get throughout the client experience. The fourth one is just to reduce confusion, friction, and overwhelm. Don't ask your clients too many questions at one time. Don't overwhelm them with several task lists to do at the same time. Don't leave them hanging and confused as to what comes next. And then, of course, keep the momentum going. We're going to talk about how to make sure that you don't have gaps in your client experience to where you've communicated, and then there's like this long silence and pause. Part of mapping out your client experience is eliminating those kind of gaps. Okay, so now we're ready to actually start mapping your process. And again, no tools yet, just piece of paper and pen. So the first thing that I want to encourage everybody to do when you are fresh in the I want to map out your process, I need you to pick one offer. I will tell you that 90% of the problems that I see is because people are trying to do it for all of their offers at the same time, and it gets confusing. Once you really like dial in one offer, it is going to be easier for you to repeat this process for every other offer in your business. So please, please just pick one, okay? This is how you can get it done in the most stress-free place. Why do you focus on one? Again, overwhelm. You'll be able to see the patterns clearly. I come across a lot of inquiries and a lot of my students that say, oh no, like offer 2 is so different from offer 1. And I'm like, really? And then when they take the time to map out offer 1, they realize that the actual customization and personalization between offer 1 and offer 2 is actually very small compared to what they thought in their head when they started the process. And the good thing about Dubsado, especially when we get to building the forms, the emails, the workflows, you're going to be able to duplicate whatever you did for offer number 1 and save a lot of time by customizing it instead of starting from scratch. Okay, so now you need to list every single client touch point that you will have with a client from beginning to end. And again, this is not a task list of what Dubsado will do for you. This is everything that you want to do with them. This can include things like sending client gifts. That is not part of your process in Dubsado. I mean, it might be a to-do task, but again, things are going to be on this list that you cannot do inside of a tool like Dubsado. And so to kind of kick us off with this part of the conversation, I have listed some sample touch points that I have thought of for a photographer. Now, these actually probably apply to any creative service provider. And honestly, most of these are going to apply to you. It's when you start to get in the nitty gritty and you start to put things between these touch points when you get something that is really customized to your own business. So we've got have a consultation call. I know not everyone loves them, but they are highly converting. You send them an offer. You confirm that they're booked. You ask them for some information in order to perform your service. If you're a photographer, you want to make sure that we're all on the same page as to where we're having this session. I only do in-home sessions, so that's not actually a thing for me. You send them prep information. For a website designer, it might be getting you all of their login information and any branding that they've already had done. For photographers, it might be, how to style yourself for your session, what to do with your kids the day of. I want everyone to get in the habit of touching bases with your client the week of your session or your service. We're going to talk about specifics in a few slides. You have the service, you have the photography session. You deliver the gallery, or in the case of a website designer, you deliver a final, draft of the website, either for their review or you're making it live. And then last, you're asking your clients for a Google review or a testimonial or more general feedback, whatever floats your boat. Okay, now this is where, if you are watching this on the replay, I would like for you to pause, and I would actually like for you to sit down and make this list. Now that I've just given you those, you are going to have many more. I didn't want to have 3 slides of touch points, but if you are watching this on a replay, I do want you to pause and make your list. Those of you that are here with me live, I'm sorry, we don't have time for this, but you can do it right after we're done. Okay. In this process, once you've got all of your touch points laid out on a piece of paper, I like to go one by one and say, okay, what happens next? Because I guarantee you, you probably only hit the milestones. You probably only listed the big things, which include sending a form, sending an email, doing those things that can be done in Dubsado. You probably left out the things like send my client a text message, touch bases with them on nap time, whatever it is. So I want you to take every single one of these questions and simply ask yourself what comes next. And if there's something that you forgot, write it in the margins. Okay, then you have to think about what your client will do after every single one of these touch points. Now, some of the touch points will require an action or a response for them. It will require them to reply to the email and say yes. It will require them to schedule a planning call. It will require them to fill out your booking proposal. Everything that requires an action or a response from the client is then going to require something from you. But make sure that you know which of these actions require something from the client, because we are going to talk about automating the steps in between when we get to the workflow section. Okay, so everything that requires an action. Did they do it? Yes. What happens? Did they do it? No. What happens? This is where your process is no longer linear. You're going to have a bunch of decision trees, which is going to make this very messy, but messy is just part of the process. Now, after every single one of those is when you are going to jump in and put what your responsibility is. So again, if you have, for example, sent the client a booking proposal and they didn't fill it out, what do you think you're going to do? Well, I'm going to follow up. I'm going to nudge it in their inbox and be like, hey, just making sure this didn't end up in spam. Or, hey, you said you wanted a session in 2 weeks. If you want that session in 2 weeks, we've got to get this ball rolling. I am going to touch bases with them. If they immediately open the proposal, choose their service, sign the contract, pay me my money, what I need to do next, what my mother taught me is polite to do, is to say thank you. Bare minimum, you need to say, thank you for booking me. You are on my calendar. Now, how do you elevate your client experience? You do other things like preparing them for the next stage, sending them tips to get ready for the session. That's when you start to layer in those really awesome client experience elements. Okay, now how does this happen? And I'm specifically talking about your actions. Are you sending them an email? Are you sending them a text message? Are you ordering them a Starbucks gift card off of Amazon or off of Target or Starbucks or whatever it is, and you're having it directly sent to their email? Or are you asking a team member to make a client gift box that you send to all your clients? Like, this doesn't have to happen as part of your workflow, but you do need to know what you need to do next. So for each client action, do you need to send a confirmation email? Is there a task that you need to do outside of Dubsado? If they don't do it, how many reminders are appropriate to where you don't seem like you're nagging them? There is an art to following up with clients. It's a very fine balance between being the annoying person and actually getting what it is that you need in order to perform the service. And then last, if you have team members, you just need to know at what stages you need to pass something along to a different team member. Now, when does this happen? I don't necessarily want you to start thinking about this exactly in the actions and the triggers that we will have in Dubsado, but you do need to just write down a very rough timeline. Like 2 weeks after they book, you want to send the client questionnaire. A week after the client questionnaire is completed, you want to schedule a planning call. A week before the session, you want to check in with them and see if everything's changed, make sure everybody's healthy, make sure that you have a good game plan. The day before, you might want to check in with them about weather and reminders of snack for the kids and like all of these things. And if you write down the timeline of when you think it will happen, this is when you can start to look for those gaps. Like, is there a point in your service where it's been 3 weeks and they haven't heard from you? You haven't nurtured them in any way. Having it all written down on a piece of paper is going to make it easier when you create your workflows, but it's also going to make it to where if you have those gaps, you are going to be able to think of other tasks that you could do in order to make the client experience feel more consistent and not choppy, where you ask them for 5 things and then there's like a pause, and then you ask them for 3 things and then there's a pause. Now, the final thing in creating your client journey is to figure out where your clients are struggling. And this is where you might not have the knowledge earlier in your business, but after you've been in business a while, you will start to see where things drop. One of the best things that I've set up for a client would probably be your prep guide. If you are someone who is sending preparation for a session or a service right after they book, and they are booking you 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I mean like a year in advance for a wedding, they have already forgotten the prep guide if they read it in the first place. A lot of people will be like, oh, that session is not for a few more months, I'll just read it later. And then they forget. So if you find that your clients are consistently asking you things that you have already put in your prep guide, there's a couple things that you can do. You can send them emails that have specific parts of the prep guide highlighted for them so that if they didn't read the whole guide or they forgot what it said, you are giving them the most important pieces in strategic timelines on their client experience. The second thing that you could do is just make sure that you are relinking that client guide in the emails where it matters most, with a link saying, hey, this is a good time for you to take a look at the prep guide if you are currently trying to figure out what you're going to wear for your session or whatever it is. Okay. And so how can you best support them? I think I just gave you like 3 or 4 ideas of how you could best support them and get over what they're struggling with. But depending on what your business is, your support might look different. But literally ask yourself the question, if my client is struggling with this, how can I make it easier for them? All right. So I'm bringing back up my touch points. And here I want you to think about how you can give them the warm and fuzzies. Again, this is like process. This is steps. But what can we do in here in order to elevate the client experience and make them feel like, wow, I made a really good decision in hiring Colie? Like for the consultation calls, I don't know how annoying you guys find reminders, but I have been told many times that people love my reminders because they don't have to search for the Zoom link for our call. I put it in every single reminder email that I send. If there is something that they were supposed to do, I send it in the last 2 reminders so that if they haven't had a chance to fill out that form, to make their list of questions, whatever it is, that I am reminding them that it's probably a good idea that they do it before the call. So for each one of these steps, just figure out if there's a way that you can make them feel like they are really being taken care of, and also reminding them that you are an awesome professional. All right. So for a consultation call, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is in this day and age with how crazy life is to give people the option of scheduling automatically. It doesn't have to be that you let them do it for everything. But for me, this is a big thing that takes away stress. Because when someone sends me 3 things and I'm not available for all of them, I almost feel guilty for responding to them and being like, well, no, I'm not available on any of those 3. I'm so sorry. What else do you have? But if they have a calendar and I can see all of it, then I only need to contact them if there's really nothing that works for me. I want to make it very clear what the purpose of my consultation calls is. I actually don't sell on my consultation calls. I just want to make sure that you understand exactly what I offer and who I am as a business person. If that works for you, great. If it doesn't, I will probably give you some suggestions of someone else that could work with you. But this is where you are actually helping them by not just saying, oh, I'll only work with you if you have a consultation call, without educating them on why you require it. Now, the third is I actually give them an alternative to the call. If you don't want to have a call with me, cool. I have video ask. I have, where I will record you a video where I'm talking about my process. There are ways that you can connect without forcing someone to do the synchronous call. And I'm not saying that synchronous calls are bad, guys. Like if you require one, that's fine. I just feel like you have to do more education and why it is valuable to them, and it's not just a sales requirement for yourself. The fourth one is give them an easy way to cancel or rebook. Again, it kind of takes away that guilt of, oh, this no longer works for me. Now I have to send them an email. Now I have to disappoint them. Now I have to go through that whole booking process again. And then I already mentioned it, but hello reminder emails, they are amazing. My second example is when you ask a client to complete a questionnaire. I want you to prepare them before you send it. If you are, for example, if you are a website designer and in your questionnaire, you are asking them for their brand board where it has all their colors and fonts and all that, you might want to prepare them in an earlier email to tell them what's coming. Like, hey, in a few weeks, I'm going to send you a questionnaire where I'm going to be asking you for your branding elements. I'm going to be asking you for your 20 favorite portfolio images. Like if you prepare them for that, when they get the questionnaire, they will feel like, oh, this is exactly what she said it was. I'm ready. And they can just upload all of their stuff. The second thing that I want to say is don't ask your clients things that you've already asked them. I see so many client questionnaires that end up asking a client a question that they already asked on the inquiry form, or that I know for a fact they told me they already discussed on their consultation calls. Like, don't be repetitive if it's not necessary. Make sure that you don't have them feeling like you are wasting their time and not paying attention to the things that you've already asked. Give them enough time to complete it. If you think your questionnaire takes an hour and you need that questionnaire 2 weeks before the service, you should not be sending it 16 days before the service. Like you're only giving them 2 days to do a 1-hour questionnaire. Like make sure that you are thinking about the timeline and making sure that they don't feel pressured, and also giving yourself time that if they don't do it in a timely manner, that you can remind them and not feel like the nagging business owner. Friendly reminders. I mean, these can be done in Dubsado, one of my favorite things. And then are there consequences if they don't complete it? Now, this may seem a little hard, but I like my clients to know for the system setups, if you don't do your pre-work by the time I tell you to, we will reschedule and you will probably pay me a rescheduling fee. If that is part of your process, it shouldn't be hidden in your contract. Make sure that you're communicating that to them as you give them the pre-work, as you send them the reminders, so that they have another push to get it done, but they're also not blindsided if you end up telling them, oh, no, we have to reschedule, and now I require a $500 rescheduling fee. All right, so that's the process. That's also adding in the elements that make your client experience better. And now we are actually going to talk about workflow templates. But before we do, no one, and I mean no one, should be clicking templates, workflows, add workflow if you have not created every single asset that goes in that workflow first. That means writing every single email, creating every single form, making your schedulers and testing them, making sure that your contract is good, has smart fields, doesn't need to be customized every single time, and then making sure that your packages are clear and that they have all of the appropriate taxes, discount codes, all that good stuff. You will save yourself a lot of headaches if you just make all of this first. And the good news is, once you've mapped out your process, you should actually have a list of all these things that you need, because they're going to go along with the steps from your process. All right. If you need help writing emails, This is like a little pitch for me. I do these Dubsado webinars, and then I wonder if anybody else watches them ever again. But 2 webinars ago for Dubsado, I did one on the magic of automated emails. And I will say, I think this is one of the best webinars I've ever done. Once you watch it, you will feel like you are prepared to write much better client experience emails, because there are 3 things that they all need. They all need a purpose, they all need to show your personality, and they all need to give a preview. And so if you are intrigued by those 3 things, please go to either Dubsado's YouTube or to this URL, coliejames.com/magic, and watch that one. It's going to help you write all the emails that you need for everything that we just did. All right, moving forward. Workflow anatomy. We've got actions, we've got triggers. This is when we get to the techie part. This is when you take everything that you've done, all this hard work that you've done, and now we are actually going to create Dubsado workflows from them. Okay, so these are your actions that are available. Changing a project status, adding a tag, sending an email, sending a form, creating a to-do, all of these. All of these have appropriate places inside of your workflows. Before you create your workflows, you should be taking the process that you mapped out and writing it down in language that makes sense for the workflows. And so I do want you to have a screen like this up so that you can write your workflows down in language that makes sense, so that when you do go to templates, workflows, add new workflow, everything is written down for you. Same thing with your triggers. Now, this is what I mean. Oh, well, sample booking workflow first. Inquiry submitted, send an auto response email, review the inquiry form, send a scheduler, change a project status. After an appointment has been scheduled, after an appointment has ended, send a schedule or send a proposal. The proposal is completed, the contract is signed, the invoice is paid, you change the project status to booked. Do you guys see how this feels very different than the things that we talked about mapping out before? But they're all related. This is just putting it more in Dubsado language. Okay, now we're to the part that I thought we were on the previous one. This is what I want you guys to actually write down when you are ready to do your workflows. You want to write down what the action is, and it needs to be in a Dubsado element. So change a project status, send an email, send a form, activate a portal. Then you need to give the when. Now, the when is directly related to the timelines that you put on your client process earlier. So you're taking whatever it is that you said when the action needed to happen, and you're putting it together in a trigger that Dubsado will understand. And then there's always like the what. In this case, because it's changed project status, you're just telling it which status it's changing to. In the next example, where we are sending an email, we would be listing the actual asset that goes along with this workflow action and trigger. So you're sending an email, you're sending it immediately after the workflow starts. You do not want to require an approval for this particular email, and the email that I want it to send is my automated lead response email specifically for families. Because if you are not sending differentiated automated lead responses, depending on what the client is inquiring about, you are missing the boat. This is when you can keep their curiosity and their excitement to work with you right after they have inquired about your services, and you give them stuff to look at. If you are a website designer, I don't know why I'm on a website designer kick today. If you're a website designer, and let's say that they want a full website, I would actually list a few of your clients and some social proof, some testimonials that they gave you, and actually link to their website so that they can see the work that you've done. Like, this is when, and that would be different than if someone was hiring you for, let's say, branding or something else. Like, you want to make sure that this email is very customized to what they are inquiring about. All right. When you are creating these workflows, these are the issues that I see when I give people client experience audits all the time. First, please do not have a workflow where every single action that can have an approval has an approval. You don't have a functioning workflow if you do that. You have a system that still requires you to basically approve and do everything like it was manually. You are going to be losing so much time when you do that. So approvals are okay in the beginning, particularly while you're testing, while you're figuring things out. But once you get there, you should not have approvals on every single step in your workflow. If you do, You are not using smart fields enough. You are not using differentiated workflows enough. You are making it harder for yourself. The second thing that I want you to look out for are emails with no purpose. Remember, all client experience emails should have purpose, show your personality, and have a preview. You should not be sending emails that don't have a purpose. That is why your clients will ignore your emails. If you are constantly sending emails that are just like, hey, just checking in if you have any questions, that doesn't have a purpose. If you send too many of those, they're just going to stop it. They're going to start ignoring all of the rest of your emails. All right. And then number 3 is too much form and email customization. I get a lot of pushback on this. Like, when you're sending a proposal, I am all for you taking 5 minutes to personalize it based on that particular inquiry, like location if you're doing a wedding, number of family members if you're doing a family session. Like, it's okay if you do that. But if you have it on every single email and every single form to where you have to go in there and customize it, you haven't written it well enough to start. And this is where you're going to still lose time and money. Okay, so mapped your process, added in your client experience elements. You've created the workflows, you mapped them out, and then you created them. Everyone should test their workflows, should test them multiple times, should ask their friends to put in their email and test them as well. This is how you find errors. Y'all, I've been helping people set up things for 5 years, and I still find errors that I do. Maybe I had some weird spacing in a email, maybe a smart field, the second brace didn't get copied over, and so it's not populating correctly. Maybe I accidentally chose the wrong smart field. You don't find the errors unless you are testing. So here's how you test your workflows. First, do not use your business email. You need to use a personal email that is not also your business email, because I want you to be able to see every single email that goes to you as the business owner and every single email that goes out to the client. The second thing is you need to fill out every single one of those forms as your client. Open them in an incognito window. If you don't, sometimes Dubsado won't realize that it was filled out by a non-business owner, and it might not trigger the next step in the workflow. So just get in the habit when you are testing to always open incognito windows in order to do it. Again, read and review every single email that you receive as the client multiple times. I mean, that's how I find all my errors. The fourth is to make sure that each automated step triggers properly. Now, there are going to be some that work automatically like they should, and there are going to be others where you are going to have to force them to happen because you don't want to sit there for 2 weeks and wait for an email to trigger. I mean, that's pointless. But other than the ones that have to be forced because they're supposed to happen way in the future, make sure that you are the ones that should be sent immediately, make sure that they are being sent immediately. And then again, check every single smart field. Client.name. No one should be using that. It should always be the first name. I mean, maybe there's a scenario I'm not thinking of, but that's a smart field most people shouldn't be using unless it's on the contract. All right, quick fixes that will make all the difference when you are creating the workflows and testing the workflows is automate your form follow-ups. My absolute favorite trigger in Dubsado is after form not completed. That is how you automatically remind people to fill out the forms that you sent them without adding any additional stress to yourself. You don't need to be in there sending those reminders. Let the workflow do the work for you. Automate your reminders before the session and after the session and the service. You don't need to be in there trying to remember to send 3 different reminders or 3 different prep emails before a service. Let the workflow do it for you. Lean into your email templates. That is why I shared that webinar. I think writing email templates is like the hero of most of our businesses. I don't know that I could have anticipated that we would all need to write this many emails as business owners. I just didn't. Make sure that you use smart fields to limit your need to personalize. And just in case you don't know, there are custom map fields. Like, you're not stuck to only using the ones that Dubsado gives you. You can create smart fields on your own. My favorite one for when I'm setting up people's CRMs and stuff is when your support period ends. Like, before I kick off your offboarding emails and your support emails, I have a custom map field where I put in where your support ends. And then every single email that you get after that reminds you when your support ends. Why? Because I don't want anybody to come to me and be like, oh, Colie, I didn't know my support was ending. Yes, you did. It was in the last 7 emails that you received from me. Saves me a lot of headaches, guys. And then last, Use effective statuses inside of your dashboard to organize your clients. If you haven't added these, this is going to give you just so much joy when you open up your dashboard so that you can see where each one of your clients' projects are inside of your process. All right. So if you are ready to map your process and create workflows of your own, you are now ready. If you want the slides, go to coliejames.com/mapping, and then you can get download of the Canvas slides so that if you need them while you are trying to map out your process, you will have them. All right, that is it. Trevor is now going to come kick on, and he is going to ask me whatever questions you guys have asked me while I was babbling for the last 40 minutes.
Yes, I am. No, that was fantastic. That was so well done, Colie. Thank you very much for that. And we do have a nice, healthy bucket of questions to pull from here. So let's dig into it. Let me pull this over here real quick. Where did my chat go? There we are. Perfect. Okay, great. So to begin with, going all the way back to the very beginning of what you were talking about in your presentation, we had some questions about social proof. Casey asked if social proof would be considered testimonials, but do you have any other examples of what would be defined as social proof?
I mean, so it's a little weird. It depends on how you're getting your testimonials. Like sometimes you will ask your clients to give you a testimonial and you'll give them a form to do it.
Sure.
Other times you're like getting their feedback in an email and you're snatching it from there. Screenshots are great. You know, a lot of people think right now that testimonials are being faked. And so if you can grab a screenshot, especially of a Google review, that's good. But that is what I mean. It's kind of weird. I use my client testimonials and feedback in two different ways. Number one, I do actually use them as testimonials. There's a few on my proposal. There's a couple scattered throughout my email process. But then I also use the words that my clients used as my headlines, as my subject lines. Because if my clients use those words, chances are future clients are thinking the same thing. And so that catches their attention and that increases the, opportunity or the chance that they're actually going to follow through and book.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That makes perfect sense, right? The things that your clients are worrying about or thinking about or considering are likely shared across your other clients. So kind of using that as your common denominator. And that way you're kind of all speaking the same language, is kind of what it sounds like, right? Yeah. All right. So that kind of parlays nicely into a question from Angel, which he was asking about how is the best way to ask for Google reviews, since you just mentioned Google reviews. And do you ask any particular questions in your Google review kind of prompts?
I do. I have a toolkit, but let me see if I can remember. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're asking questions of your entire client experience. So you want to ask them how they found you. And honestly, you shouldn't wait until the end to ask. You should actually ask that on your inquiry form. And then if you're not having a consultation call, you should ask that as part of your client questionnaire, because the further they get away from the act of inquiring about you, they are going to forget exactly what they Googled, exactly what they were thinking, those kinds of things. But at the end, I usually ask them as a photographer, I asked them how they felt about working with me, what their favorite image was in the gallery. Was there anything that they were apprehensive about before they hired me? How did their partner and or kids feel about the session? And then I also ask, the last question that I ask is, if a friend asked you for a recommendation for an insert whatever you do, I'll say family photographer, would you recommend me and why? Whatever they give you in that one, I put a button at the bottom of the Dubsado form and it says, please copy and paste your last response into a Google review. And when they click the button, my Google reviews pop up. So then they could just copy and paste it in there. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is I get a lot of people that are like, okay, but I don't really care about like that form. I just want the Google review. I'm going to suggest something a little cheeky then. I would just put it in your email signature. Like leave me a Google review and have it down there. And then after you've delivered the gallery or the service or sometime, at the end, I would send them a specific email that's like, hey, I loved working with you. If you loved working with me, you probably have friends and family that do too. It would mean the world to me if you would give me, a testimonial. You can phrase it however you want. And then I would just directly give them a link to the Google reviews.
Yeah, those are both really good options. I love both of those ideas. It's fantastic. And Angel approves as well. Fantastic. Okay, cool. Next question was from Grace, and she asked for tasks that don't require a client action, such as they just need to go ahead and send a welcome gift, for example. It's just kind of the user's own action. Would you still add that to your workflow to help remind yourself about it? Or would you use something else to help you remind it for just, the things that you need to do?
So I realized there was something missing off of one of those slides. Remember when I said the bottlenecks? The one thing that I also get in a lot of people's workflows that I audit is that they add the to-do tasks, and then they have a bunch of them that are the triggers are after all previous actions
I'm gonna hold it
complete.
up. Yeah,
Those two together, no one should be doing that. Here's why. If it is a to-do task and you want to put it there just to remind yourself, but if you have actions after that won't trigger unless that is checked off, unless you are someone that is like OCD about checking off all your tasks, you might actually delay important client emails because you didn't go in there and check a box that said you sent them a $10 Starbucks gift card. Like, so if you're not going to do that, it's okay to have them in the workflows. If not, I would actually, if you use any other kind of software to manage your projects, like I'm thinking ClickUp, Asana, those kinds of things, that is actually where I would tell you to put those so that they do not interfere with your actual client actions that need to happen.
totally. No, that's a really good point. Yeah. I think the instance as well where it would make sense is if you did need to do something yourself and it was then important that you did that first before an email, for example, goes out.
Yes.
And of course,
So, like, for
alternatively,
example, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, please go ahead, please.
No, I was thinking, so for the proposal, when I'm setting up people's workflows and they are going to be customizing it, the first thing that I have them do when they create the booking workflow or when they activate it, there is a to-do task that says, don't send the proposal below until you've
Yeah,
customized it. Like,
exactly.
or if
Yeah,
you know that you discussed a time and day for your service or whatever it is on the consultation call, you might want to put a to-do task at the beginning. Don't send anything until you've put the project date in because you don't want your contract to populate with no
with
project
no,
date. So honestly, at the beginning of a workflow, I'm all about it to do. It's just
yeah,
I don't want it later where it could affect your client actions.
exactly. Not totally makes sense. Okay, cool. We've got a couple more questions that popped up here in the chat. Let's see here. Let's stay on the topic of tasks here. So Megan said about tasks. Is there an update coming that'll allow tasks to be assigned to clients and not just to someone in the business? This is more of like looking forward sort of. Yeah, she's like, yeah, this is for you.
It's a
Uh,
Trevor question.
Megan, that's a great question. I think that's a really, really good idea where we can assign those to tasks, or sorry, assign those to clients rather. Um, the best thing that we have currently, Megan, because what you're referring to about assigning it to the clients does not exist in Dubsado just yet, although it's totally a possibility in the future. You could use what's called a task board if you haven't taken a look at that, where it is a bit more collaborative, right? A task board allows you to sort of have tasks for yourself and tasks for the clients, and you can put more information in those task boards that makes it more clear that, hey, I need you to do this and I'm going to do this, since it is more Kanban style. So that's an option for you, Megan, but I'll definitely make a note of that for moving forward since we're working on a lot of cool stuff right now.
Actually, I had a suggestion. Hey,
Yeah, what's
Megan.
that? Tell me,
So
Colie.
here's the thing, forms. I am not a big fan of send them a form that only has a line, check off that you did this one thing. But
Mhm.
if it is a selection of tasks, let's say that you're a copywriter and you want to make sure that they've given you like these 4 things,
Sure.
you could create a form and it could have the 4 check boxes, each of them being required. And then you could have a thing at the bottom that just says, make sure that you hit submit. And then the submit would trigger as a form completed, which would kind of be the same thing as a task completed.
Yeah.
But again, not just
No,
for one thing. It would have to be more than one to make it worth it, but yes.
yeah, no, that's a great idea. If you've got a meaty list of tasks to make
Yeah.
sure the client's actually doing all of those things, not just going, I did one of them and we'll figure it out. Yeah, no, that's a fantastic idea, Colie. I love that. All right. Carrie Ann asks, when do you send a feedback email? I notice they won't send from the workflow if the project has been archived, which is true. And my OCD archives as soon as it's done. So she's really looking at more of the timing, right? Like if she's done with delivered her services, she's archived the project, that means the workflow is then paused at that point. So would you advise her to maybe not archive those projects potentially if
Yes.
she's gonna be using the workflow? Yeah, that would be my
So
guess as
if
well.
you are going to automatically archive, you want your archive trigger to be after the feedback is sent. And you might want to time it to where, in case you have a follow-up email, you have a little bit of time. But
Yeah,
like, I think that automatically archiving it 2 weeks after you've sent a feedback request is probably good.
sure.
The other thing, well, no, actually, I'm going to leave it with that. That's
I
my
was going to add one more thing to that as well for Carrie Ann. If you're in the situation, Carrie Ann, where you were like, okay, I know I delivered my service for this client and I kind of just want to get that project out of the way, you could just elect to create a custom project status that is just a done status, which is sort of the waiting
completed.
area until you get to archived, right? That way you're not kind of sifting through those projects to deal with your active clients, but it's still active, right? The workflow is still active and you can go ahead and send that follow-up email and then it will archive.
And I will say, guys, Dubsado 3.0 is around the corner, and we just happen to have a lot more filter options
Yes,
in
we do.
3.0. And so I do think that that's going to help. Like, I specifically have a status that says feedback requested.
Yep,
And
that's exactly
then,
what Carrie Ann just said.
I move it to completed after I've sent it or whatever. But, you can have a thing like that. That way, if it's someone that you really wanted to hear from and they haven't, if you search for every project in feedback requested, and they haven't filled out the form. That's why I like the forms too, guys. If you give them a feedback form and they complete it, then you could move them to complete it
Yeah,
automatically in a workflow, and then you could archive them. Like, it's a process. But that
exactly.
way, if you went into feedback requested and there's somebody in there that you sent that automatic email to and they didn't get back to you, maybe you send them a text message. Maybe you call them if you're really bold and be like, hey, I'm just wondering if you would mind hopping on a call so I could talk to you about your experience. I love doing that, guys. It's so helpful for your copy. It's amazing.
That's a fantastic idea too. I love that. I think I missed a question or two further back here in the chat. Let me just look at this real quick. Okay. Rebecca
Somebody
asked
asked about the
earlier.
scheduler.
Sorry?
Megan asked about the scheduler.
So it's so funny because for
We had that conversation.
everyone's context, but here in the webinar right now, right before the webinar began, Colie and I were having a discussion about the Dubsado scheduler, and Megan essentially asked the exact same question that Colie had, not the question, but it brought up the same topic about updating availability. For like I said, for the YouTube context, if anything, for the replay, Megan was asking about updating your scheduler availability. And I think the goal for a lot of users is to go ahead and just simply update your availability across all schedulers, with a couple of clicks. Currently speaking, if you have more than one Dubsado scheduler template, you'll need to update the what times are you available section for every single scheduler. Although I think in Megan's case, what she was really talking about is, let's take it for the scenario that you're going to be out of town next week and you need to make sure your clients aren't booking you Monday through Wednesday, right? Instead of updating each of your schedule templates individually, you could simply go to your Dubsado calendar or your connected external calendar and add in like hey, I'm busy Monday through Wednesday, and that will then block that time slot across every schedule that you have, so long as it's set to busy. So that's a little hack for right now because that can be a little bit tedious to update those times manually.
Trevor, that's the next webinar you need to invite me for. How to effectively use your external calendar with Dubsado.
That's honestly, you
I
should throw it
travel
up
a
right
lot.
now. Yeah.
I travel a lot, y'all. So I will take, like, if I'm going to go to Disneyland, I physically mark myself off on my Google Calendar so that no matter where the scheduler is, because I have more
Exactly.
than just Dubsado schedulers, it takes my availability off. So no one should be hopping into individual Dubsado schedulers every single time that you want to mark yourself busy. Like,
Exactly.
do it on your external calendar. Save yourself a headache, because
Yeah.
the more schedulers you have, the more
Harder it
likely
is
you are
to,
to forget one. And
yeah.
then all of a sudden you've got a call and you're on a plane and you didn't realize it.
Exactly. Yep. I cannot recommend that enough. Use the external calendar there. I wanted to get to this question here from Rebecca, though. So she asks, how many nurture emails until you abandon an inquiry? She used a Zoom call to discuss the service. The client would like to provide a price, and most inquiries just ask for a price and then won't book a call no matter how many nurture emails she sends. So she wants to talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Depends on when you're considering sending the nurture emails. I consider it to be like two phases. There are the people that inquire about your services, but you don't actually send them an offer. Like, maybe you do require the consultation call and they don't schedule one or whatever it is. So that's like section number one. And then section number two is after you've sent them the offer and they appear to have ghosted you. So those are two different people. I'm going to talk about the second one first because those are automated.
Yeah.
So after form not completed is my favorite thing, guys. Again, so 3 days after form not completed, 4 days after form not completed, 5 days after form not completed. And that's not sending it every day, because I want to make it clear the time resets in the workflows every time the form gets sent. So
Exactly.
that's 3 days, 7 days, and 12 days. I would do those automatically because it's not going to go to people if they haven't filled it, if they've already filled out the form. Like, that's the beauty of doing that. Now,
Yeah.
the before, I would just recommend that you take a hard look at your process And if you have people that are asking you for your pricing and won't schedule a call, and no matter what you do, when you tell them the price, they ghost you, I would argue that you have to do a harder job on your website to qualify them before they get into Dubsado. But that's like my business coach. That's not like Dubsado
Sure.
setups. But to answer the specific question of how many emails I would send, I would probably do 2 or 3. And honestly, I try harder when I was still doing a lot of sessions. I would try harder for newborns. Why? Because when a newborn hired me, they tended to be a lifetime customer. So I am willing to text, make calls, send an email, because in the end, those are the people that tend to stick with me. Or if they seem like they were just an awesome fit, and I just want to make sure that it's not me. Because one of the things that I get worried about is if people didn't get an email or it ended up in spam or whatever it is, I never want people to think I ghosted them. If
Sure.
you ghost me, it's whatever. But I don't want you to think, oh, well, I sent that inquiry and she just never responded. I don't want that. So if people are giving you your phone numbers, also, I would just send them a quick text message. Hey, it's Colie. If you've already hired somebody else, cool. I just want to make sure that you're taken care of.
Yeah. No, all fantastic advice. I love that. All right, we're right here at the top of the hour. I had a question myself, but if you want to stick around for one more question here, Colie? Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So I thought this might be helpful just for our viewers here, but how often do you find yourself going back to kind of zoom out and take a broad look at your client journey? Is it on a quarterly basis? Do you just make little tweaks every now and again when you find something? Do you actually take time out of your schedule to really do it again once a year, for example? Or how often are you kind of taking this kind of perspective?
So I talk a lot about this. Depends on how steady your business is.
Okay.
If you haven't really made any big changes, your offers haven't changed, your ideal client is still the same, you can get away with doing it every 6 months,
Okay.
maybe even every year. But if you are in a position where your offers are changing, you're slightly tweaking them, you don't have enough data yet to like get the sense that your workflows are doing the work for you to book people and give them that consistent experience, I might encourage you to like review it every month or even every
Sure.
quarter.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't have to be that you rehaul the whole thing. Like,
Right.
if you are starting to think differently about your offers, if someone that you worked with has given you clarity, you should probably review your systems, because you can probably make your emails better. You can probably make your proposals better. And hey, social proof and photos for those of us that are like photographers or even like website designers. If you've designed a new website, I don't know why I'm stuck on that. I'm sorry. These things, every time you get something that you're like, oh my gosh, I should update my website with that, you should probably update your proposal or your emails, because updating websites and CRMs can kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So whatever your cadence is for your website, even if you don't do a full review of your CRM, you should at least think in the back of your mind, well, I just updated this on my website. Is there anywhere that I should probably do that in my CRM as well?
Yeah. No, that's fantastic advice as well. Makes sense to do it in both places and kind of have that cadence set out.
Mhm. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Colie, thank you so, so much for being here. This has been as just about as wonderful as I thought it was going to be, because you are such a fantastic educator. I just want to let you know that. I know you know that already, but thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for being
Trevor.
here. No,
You know, does that mean that I'm still using my college degree? I don't know.
hey, I'd say so, right? Yeah, however it gets the job done. But I just want to thank you so much for being here. And everyone who's in the chats, thank you so much for attending today. Keep an eye on your emails. You'll be receiving the recording in just a couple of hours, and you can always find this on YouTube. Head to Colie's website if you want to grab those slides. I can throw that link in the chat here one more time.
Yeah.
It'll be on the YouTube recording as well. But it was ColieJames/mapping,
Yeah.
correct? Oops, if I could type the URL in there correctly, that'd be great.
Well, I mean, I spent so much time before this webinar making sure that it works, Trevor.
I know, right? That's why I wanted to make sure I plugged it once earlier, and I'll plug it again. So make sure you get it in there. Fantastic. All right, Colie. We'll catch you on the next one. I would love to have you back on it again in the future. But otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Everyone who's here in the chat, have a great rest of your day. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks so much, folks. Bye now.